Welcome back to Batman No Man's Land right here at Comicstorian. My name is Benny and I'll be your narrator for today's No Man's Land storyline. The No Man's Land plot came out around the late 90s, and what it is the idea that Gotham has had an earthquake which is separating it from the rest of the world. Since they can't get any aid from the rest of the US, the villains of Gotham have created gangs within it. If you've played the video game Arkham City, you get the general concept. Right now, Batman has built his own gang, and he's making efforts to try and retake Gotham City and get everything under control. And that is what leads us to today. No Man's Land is a structure of small, short stories of things that are happening within No Man's Land, which eventually lead to Batman retaking it. And today's story is known as The War Beneath the Streets, featuring Tim Drake. It's another day in Gotham as the sun rises over the ruins of the once beautiful metropolis. The savaged land's heroes look over the traders while they begin to set up shop, and the boy wonder has a burning question on his mind. What are they doing? Day in and day out, they work to try and keep the streets safe, but how does Gotham come back from this? They've had conversations dozens of times, but every time things are supposed to get better, and they don't. How much further down the evolutionary scale does the city have to slip before something changes? Heck, the Penguin actually seems like a respectable individual now. Batman asks if he's going to help or not, and Tim tells him that he's here, right? He's in this 100%. So Batman hands Tim a label of canned peaches, stating that there's a surplus of food expiring in the 90s. The cans have started appearing up in the North Grand and Front Street in the black markets. There's the cache that Penguin and the other scavengers haven't uncovered yet. Starvation is the weapon here. Food is the power. We don't want it in the hands of the profiteers. Meanwhile, at the unknown location of the cache, the black market sellers return to their stockpile when they notice that some of the boxes have been chewed on by rats. One of the men sees a rat skittering away and yells that they need to catch it. Let one live and they'll be breeding and you'll never get rid of them. One of the men spots the rat on a stack of crates, but as they get ready to throw something, more rats begin to appear. Suddenly, a wave of rats fall down on the men, and their screams echo out as they're being eaten alive. And that's when there's a glint of the rat catcher's canister, watching over it all. Later that night, members of the Phantoms gang rally up to sell some of their goods when an unexpected guest shows up in their bus storage unit. Tim steps out with one of the expired fruit cans, stating that it's nice to see the free market economy is alive and kicking. The leader of the gang tells the thugs to get him, but as Tim throws the cans and knocks the large man out, he says that he just has a question. Where are they picking up the surplus of canned goods? The leader asks him, "Who wants to know?" And Tim says, "Oh, I want to know." And Batman wants to know. Give me the right answers and our curiosity will end here. The Phantoms state that they have a bunch of sewer rats who are selling the stuff, and those guys hang around Coslet Street near New Riverside. After prying open a manhole cover, Tim climbs down to face his next problem, which endless path to choose from. Tim runs the possibilities, and then he hears a voice, someone shouting. He quietly follows the direction where the voice is coming from, and that's when he begins to understand the words. The rat catcher calls out to his rats, stating that they have always outnumbered their enemies. Their strength was always in their numbers, and now they've never been stronger. With the supply of food that they have, they'll be able to breed with confidence, and then they will take the streets, and Gotham will be theirs for the taking. Tim is listening and telling himself that the rat catcher has really lost it. Too much time in the fumes. But he's really working the room. As the rats claw their way into the cans, Tim continues his watch when a stray rat scurries towards him. Before Tim realizes, the rat jumps up and bites him in the heel, causing him to fall off the pipes along the ceiling. He catches himself, quickly yelling for the rat to go away, but the rat bites his finger and sends him crashing into the boxes below. As the rats surround him, the rat catcher looks over, stating, "Well, this is a pleasant surprise. Seconds on fresh meat." Tim quickly leaps to his feet, telling the rat catcher to call them off, but the rat catcher shouts that there is nothing that's going to stand in the way of his army. Not him, and not any other masked do-gooder. Tim dashes behind a tower of stacked boxes, throwing his weight into them, knocking it over into the rats. But even as they scatter out of the way, they make their way towards him, pinning him to the ground. He struggles to get them off, and that's when he sees that there is no other choice, bringing out his secret weapon. Seconds later, there's a loud zap as hundreds of thousands of volts pulse off of his costume. He begins to make his escape after stunning the rats, and the rat catcher yells that he will not get away. After him! With no other choice, Tim jumps down into the sewage below, stopping the rats in their tracks. And the rat catcher is forced to watch Tim Drake float away, shouting that he can't allow him to bring the others. They'll take our food! So the rat catcher does the only thing that he can do, and he sends his trusty rat, Patch, to track down Tim. After tumbling through the pipe system for a while, Tim manages to grab onto a broken piece of metal, climbing up onto a ledge. With hardly any energy left, Tim hurries to the abandoned subway station connecting the sewers to the rest, and he begins to take some antibiotics to avoid the infection. A short while later, after closing his eyes, Tim feels something cold touch his face. He springs up to see a bunch of people crowded around him and a young man wearing a wolf pelt, stating that they mean him no harm. They found him with an extremely high fever. The girl next to him says that they lowered his temperature with the ice. And Tim asks, "Ice? Where in Gotham did you find ice?" The boy, who seems to be the leader, takes off his wolf pelt, telling him that he can explain all of it. His name is Aragoth, the war chief of the Wolflings, and they are the guardians of Gotham's depths. Tim looks at Aragoth, thinking that can't be his real name because his real name is Corey Windmere. He was in Tim's third period class in Gotham Heights High. Tim gets up, stating that he appreciates the help, but they all need to remain hidden. There are some pretty mean characters fighting for control up on the streets. The girl tending to Tim asks, will he help them? And Tim says that they don't know anything about him, but Aragoth tells him that they know exactly who he is. Tim steps back, asking, "You do?" And Aragoth smiles, stating, "Of course! You're the Squire of Batman, Robin the Boy Warrior. You fight for justice just as we do. However, you must rest. We don't have any medicine." Tim takes out another antibiotic pill, stating that he just needs to rest and take these. Give him some time to recover. There's a huge storeroom of medicines and food hidden here, though. Batman had sent him to find it. Aragoth calls out to the other Wolflings, asking, "Did you hear? The rumors are true. There's a quest for the Wolflings." Tim tries to tell him not to go, but the girl tending to him says that he must rest. He ignores her request to catch up with the others, and Aragoth looks at him, stating that he is ill. "Please allow the chief of the Wolflings to fulfill the Batman's will." Tim tells him again that they can't. There are some really bad guys out in the sewers. Aragoth shrugs off the comment, stating that Robin's danger is the Wolflings' danger, and they will complete their quest. Meanwhile, in another part of the sewers, the rat catcher walks through the sewage where Patch suggested that he go, and stumbles upon some floating ice. He asks where it came from, when suddenly he realizes the question is not where did it come from, but who. The rat catcher takes off his mask, telling Mr. Freeze that it's been a while. Last time they saw each other, it was Blackgate. And Freeze says, "Ah, the Rat Man. Maybe you know where the supposed hidden stockpile of goods are located. It is said that it is in some kind of warehouse." Ratcatcher thinks for a moment and says that he's not so sure. He's been down here since Blackgate and hasn't come across anything like that. Wish he could help. Freeze fires his cryo gun, freezing one of the rats, shouting, "You're lying!" He then smashes the rat into 100 pieces, telling the Ratcatcher that he will help him find the cache or he will end up like his little friend there. Ratcatcher says, all right, you win. But back with the Wolflings, Aragoth leads his pack through the sewer system when Wind Rider crawls out of the vent, stating that he's found it. A room full of a whole bunch of stuff. The Wolflings all quickly pile into the vent and they crawl through to the other side to find Ratcatcher's stash. Just as they begin to pick out things and bring them back one at a time, one of the Wolflings spots a rat. A voice then asks, "Who are these kids?" And the Ratcatcher asks, "How should I know? The sewers are crawling with freeloaders these days." Aragoth stands tall, stating that the bounty is claimed by the Wolflings. It is pointless to challenge us. You are two while we are many. And Ratcatcher asks, "Many, huh? Looks like all your friends are already in the middle of running away." Back a little ways, Tim is pushing through his fever, looking for where Aragoth went, when suddenly Wind Rider and another of the Wolflings run past him. He tries to ask where is Aragoth, and the two just yell, "Don't know, scary guys!" Tim sees one of the Wolflings drop his bow and arrow and decides that maybe he should bring that along. Back in the storeroom, Mr. Freeze fires his cryo gun again, hitting some of the canned food crates, attempting to shoot Aragoth and Ratcatcher, asking, "Are you crazy? Turn that thing off! You're freezing this stuff, and if you do, it's no good to anyone." But meanwhile, up in the vents, Tim quietly creeps in, pulling back on the bow. He releases the string and the shoddy wooden arrow pierces Freeze's tubes on his back. He spins around, freezing the pipes, telling Ratcatcher that he said nothing about Batman knowing of this place, and Ratcatcher says, "You didn't ask! Besides, I've only seen the kid!" But as Tim tries to get back into the vents, the part that was frozen shatters and he lands on the ground. He knocks 3 arrows at once, releasing them, and they all bounce off of Freeze's armor. And he asks, "Was that supposed to do anything?" Aragoth puts his weight into some of the boxes, tipping them over onto the rat catcher. Freeze scoffs, stating, "I don't need the rat man. Why make this difficult? It will only end poorly." So Tim hides behind a box, telling him, "I need a plan. I can't attack head on. What if I were to?" So he jumps up, throwing his batarangs at the pipes that Freeze is standing next to. He breaks them so that all the hot water begins to pour down on Mr. Freeze, and as the steam is clearing, Tim jumps on top of a frozen-in-place Freeze, telling him, "It's over. Try and move and you're gonna crack your cryo suit." A short while later, Gordon's Blue Boys take Freeze and Ratcatcher in. Batman watches, stating that he thought that they might have some bad customers down there. "Had no idea that they were this formidable. Robin here did the impossible. It's time for us to go home." As Batman looks back, he sees Tim still feeling the effects of the fever. So he picks him up, telling Cassandra to stay with the cops until everyone is locked down. "I'll be back when Robin is stabilized." And that concludes our short story and the No Man's Land narrative. Now, if you're new to our channel, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit that like button because we are bringing you Batman No Man's Land every Sunday right here at the channel. And don't forget, you get early access to our videos, unedited versions of our podcasts, and just support us in additional ways over at Patreon, patreon.com/Comicstorian. Thank you guys so much for your support in general, and I'll see you next week right here at the No Man's Land.